Welcome to the 2025 Anita and Antonio Gotto Lecture. We are so glad you're here. And now, please join me in welcoming the senior pastor of Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church, the Reverend Dr. Scott Black Johnston.
Good afternoon and welcome. Today's lecture is made possible by a generous gift from two of New York's finest educators. Throughout their lives, Anita and Tony Gotto have been teachers. Anita, an elementary educator with an expertise in child development, and Tony, a renowned cardiologist and former dean of Weill Cornell Medical School, saw the promise of this lectureship. And it's because of the Gotto's vision and their hard work that we're all here today. Today, Anita and Tony send their greetings to all of you from afar. This weekend, at the tender age of 89, Tony is teaching a class on cardiovascular disease in Salzburg, Austria. So over the many miles, let us extend a Fifth Avenue thank you to Tony and Anita as they connect via live stream. At this time, I also want to thank the officers and volunteers of Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church, the church's maintenance and security teams, and especially Stephanie Kelly, Austin Appleback, Jamie Staley, Sean McAvoy, Vashina Brisbane, Sabrina Rodriguez, and Emily Dumbroff. Thank you, Team Fifth Avenue. You have been, as always, downright fabulous. Every once in a while, I play the game, if these walls could talk. If the walls of this sanctuary, completed in 1875, were to whisper in our ears, what would they say? They might speak about presidents who have worshiped here, Teddy Roosevelt. They might mention noteworthy preachers who have graced this pulpit behind the screen. You can't see it. Barbara Brown Taylor, William Barber in recent memory. These walls would surely bend our ears about the arts. They would tell you that in December of 1965, Duke Ellington and his orchestra performed one of the Duke's famous concerts in this space. On that night, Lena Horne premiered the song The Christmas Surprise, filling this vast room with her tremendous voice. And by the way, every Sunday, accomplished musicians continue in that glorious tradition. These walls could testify to the time when acclaimed poet Christian Wyman read verse here. They could talk about the afternoon when Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Marilynne Robinson spoke softly to us in this place, her steady voice challenging our faith to be bold. These walls might tell you that in this space, thoughtful people have consistently encouraged us to attend to the world out there, to attend to what is beautiful and to what is ugly, to gaze unflinchingly at hard truths, and to seek hope in unfamiliar places. It makes sense then that this church focuses so much of its energy on attending, because as Mary Oliver, the poet, once observed, attention is the beginning of devotion. This afternoon, we're blessed to hear from another deeply attentive person, Professor Shannon Vallor, an American scholar who received a PhD in philosophy from Boston College. Dr. Vallor currently serves as the director of the Center for Technomoral Futures in the Edinburgh Futures Institute. She also holds the Baillie Gifford Chair in the Ethics of Data and Artificial Intelligence at the University of Edinburgh. Professor Vallor is widely recognized as a leader in the ethics of emerging technologies. And she's also served on the corporate side of the equation from 2018 to 2020. Dr. Vallor was a visiting AI ethicist at Google. In her spare time, Dr. Vallor is an avid snorkeler, although she admits that she's had a bit less inclination to hop in the waters since moving to Scotland. In recent months, some have asked me, why is a church engaging in a discussion about artificial intelligence? It's a good question, and I actually think there are many ways to answer. I could respond by noting that in the September 2025 edition of the Christian Century magazine, there's a story by Daniel Tuminino Hansen. Hansen is an Episcopal priest who heads up the chaplaincy program at Emory University. During a recent hospitalization, Hansen decided to check out AI chaplain chatbots. From her bed, she reached out to, first, an evangelical chatbot named David. Second, a chatbot purporting to be Jesus. Third, a chatbot supported by the Roman Catholic Church. And fourth, even to a Presbyterian chatbot called Polity Pal. The Jesus chatbot sent her heart emojis. Polity Pal actually prayed a prayer for Hansen, raising, I think, a fascinating theological question. Does God listen to prayers generated by an algorithm? Of course, I was picturing potential cost savings, musing, could this church replace Associate Pastor for Congregational Care, Reverend Werner Ramirez, with a chatbot? In all seriousness, I thought, if churches believe they are immune to the AI revolution, they've got another thing coming. The other reason I think churches need to talk about AI goes like this. I agree with something that Thomas Friedman recently wrote in the New York Times. Two things are barreling down the tracks of history and approaching humanity far faster than we imagine. The first is climate change. The second is artificial intelligence. How we respond to these intertwined issues is the moral challenge of our time. And who better to assist us in such a conversation than a brilliant ethicist and philosopher of technomorality? Friends, please give it up for the insightful, the compelling Dr. Shannon Vallor.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And thank you to Anita and Antonio Gotto for making it possible for this lecture series to exist and for me to have the honor of coming here to speak to you today. We are going to now see, and this is always a moment of where one wonders if God is listening when you want your clicker to work. So we're going to see how that goes in a moment. My new book, The AI Mirror, uses the mirror as a metaphor to help us better understand how today's powerful AI tools work, what they are and what they're not, what they can do for us and what they can't, what they can do, but probably shouldn't. Throughout the book, I talk about AI in the context of our humanity. That is, those capabilities that we most treasure in the human animal and that are most essential to our shared flourishing together here on this planet. In that sense, then, God was listening. This talk is not about the threat that we face from machines. It's about a danger that emerges from within ourselves and our growing alienation from who we are. As I say in the book, the call is coming from inside the house. In this lecture, I'm going to explore the rapidly accelerating impact of AI on our humanity by talking about 4 things: mirrors, space, time, and stories. Let's start with mirrors. Understanding AI and its implications for humanity is a daunting and ever-expanding task. We need to grasp AI's accelerating impacts on democracy, education, science, media, the arts, and our climate. We have to consider how AI is changing how we acquire information, how we carry out our daily work, how we make life and death decisions, how we find companionship, and how we write books. How do you understand a new social force so vast and encompassing that it is, all at the same time, changing how we make food, music, laws, knowledge, love, and war? When we need to understand a new thing, we seek a metaphor, a way to link the new thing with something that we already understand. No metaphor is ever perfect, but the mirror metaphor for AI is far more apt and illuminating, much safer and less deceptive than the familiar metaphor that we're all encouraged by the AI industry to use for understanding their tools, namely the metaphor of a mind. Now you might wonder, how can a mirror possibly be a more fitting and useful metaphor than a mind for something that contains within it the term intelligence, a word that we only associate with minds? Well, let me explain. In some sense, all technologies are mirrors of humanity. Technology is an extension of human values and imagination into the built world. Every technology, from the wheel to the book, to the engine, to the computer, is a reflection of what humans at certain times and places thought was worth doing, worth making, worth enabling, worth trying. But today's AI tools are mirrors in a much more powerful sense. And before I explain how this can be true, it's important to point out that AI is not one technology, but many. AI includes not just large generative models trained on human language, but many other kinds of machine learning tools, which can be trained using an enormous variety of algorithmic techniques on anything from astronomical data to genomic data. AI also includes those older rule-based logic systems and other software architectures that can still be used to pilot drones and robots, analyze images, predict wildlife migrations, or search vast libraries. AI is much more than these technologies, too. It's a cultural object of imagination embedded in over a century of science fiction, and a distinct field of scientific research, one that's been formally established for over 60 years. But today, most people know AI as a suite of tools and techniques for solving human problems with computers. And the mirror metaphor is a stronger match for some kinds of AI than others. It's best suited to describe machine learning tools trained on large volumes of human-generated data, which happens to be the only kind of AI that we seem to hear about lately, namely large language models and their cousins, the foundational technologies behind consumer-facing generative AI applications like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on how large language models are constructed, but a simplified understanding of how mirrors work can help anyone grasp the basics. When you see an image in a glass mirror, it's a result of 3 interacting components. The first is a polished and coated glass surface that has the required physical properties to receive and reflect light. The second is the light itself. And the third component is the reflected image that you see when you look at the glass. Now, when you talk with a large language model, a very similar set of components is interacting with you. First, corresponding to the polished glass surface, is the machine learning algorithm. That's a set of encoded software instructions for training what we call a machine learning model. That's a large, complex mathematical structure extracted from an initial data set. Now, the learning algorithm first structures and then further trains that model by specifying how the model should change as it is exposed to incoming data, much as the physics of a polished mirror determine how the glass will receive and reflect incoming light. So imagine if a glass mirror's surface could be physically altered in subtle ways by the light that fell on it, such that the more light hit the mirror, the better the glass performed in reflecting it. Now you have a basic intuitive grasp of how machine learning models work. We create a reflective mathematical surface using a type of algorithm that can polish that model surface further by being exposed to training data. When the training process is complete, the mirror is polished to a usable state. And we have a mathematical structure, the trained model, that can receive and successfully reflect the patterns in any new relevant data given to it. Okay. Light is the second component of the metaphor. Data is the light. Instead of visible light falling on physically polished glass surfaces, AI mirrors work when stored digital data falls on mathematically polished algorithmic surfaces. The model gets its initial properties, what we call weights or parameters, by means of exposure to a torrent of digital light, our data, all the hoarded data that large AI companies have grabbed and scraped and stolen from us so that they can beam our collected light into their own tools, training them to reflect new light, new data inputs back to us in ways that look intelligent. And that's the third and final component of an AI mirror's structure. The reflected images they show back to us are the outputs that we get when we use the model, whether we enter the new light of our prompts and queries typed by hand into a ChatGPT window or spoken into your phone. The answers we get back, those intelligent-seeming replies from a large language model, are just composite reflections of the patterns found in all the data taken from us, which now reside in the model as a mathematical structure. If they're just mirrors made of math, why do the responses of a large language model sound so intelligent or conscious, even alive? It's because they're reflections of data taken from intelligent, conscious, living beings from us. But if you now understand that this is a mirror image of intelligence, you realize that what looks intelligent is not. Think about when you walk into your bathroom in the morning and look in the mirror. You know very well, I hope, that there's not a second face with you in that room, no second body looking back at you. If you're alone, there's only one face, one body in the room, and then a mirror image of it. You know that the image of the face you're looking at has no depth, no warmth, no smell, no life. It's a reflection, it's not a duplicate. A reflection of a face is not a face. A reflection of a flower is not a flower, it needs no water. A reflection of a flame is not a flame, it does not burn. A reflection of a mind is not a mind, it does not think. Reflections are their own kind of thing. And as psychologists have demonstrated, only an infant or a creature who hasn't passed the cognitive stage known as the mirror test will confuse the thing with its reflection. Yet AI companies very much want you to fail the mirror test when it comes to their products. They want you to believe that you are seeing a new kind of intellect on the other side of that algorithmic mirror, something even smarter, more powerful, more capable, more trustworthy than you are. Something that can not only help you, but teach you, comfort you, even speak and write for you. And one day that can't come soon enough for those who control the image replace you. That's the power of the mirror illusion and the danger. Much like the ancient Roman poet Ovid's tragic figure of Narcissus, the boy who lost his life to his captivation by his own beautiful reflection, we are today at risk of losing ourselves in our AI mirrors, slowly becoming convinced that the thing on the other side is just as real, just as much of a mind as we are. Maybe one day soon, even more so. In my book, I describe more fully the power of these algorithmic mirrors to not only usefully reflect, analyze, and magnify valuable patterns in our data, a power that can be life-saving when used responsibly, but like all mirrors, to also distort, confound, and occlude our reality. For example, AI mirrors not only reproduce and magnify the patterns of injustice in our data, they routinely produce even more distorted versions of these biases, bouncing back to us funhouse mirror images of worlds where women have never been CEOs, or artists, or worlds where all attractive people are light-skinned, where white people never use social services, and where productive people are only young men with too much hair product. The unpredictable distortions generated by these tools can be absurd. Remember Google's fine-tuned AI that wildly overcompensated for these underlying biases by portraying Nazis as racially diverse? Or maybe you remember the notoriously error-prone AI overview tool telling us that nutritionists want us to eat 1 rock a day. Today's AI overview isn't much better. So the rock a day thing was about a year and a half ago, but this was last week. This is a friend of mine, AI researcher Vince Conitzer, who's been posting daily examples of AI overview errors. This was my favorite run from last week, where AI overview says you can't throw a paper plane across the border from Canada to Alaska because it thinks that the distance is 2,400 kilometers, because that's how long the border is. Yeah, it's not great. Maybe you remember X's Grok bot making up a news story about Mayor Adams sending the NYPD into the subway to shoot the 2024 earthquake before it could strike again. Okay, we should actually be grateful for these more ridiculous distortions, for they quickly puncture the mirror illusion of a machine mind and show the utter absence of thinking and understanding behind these hollow reflections. And we need that perspective when AI falsehoods sound dangerously real, like when the very same Grok bot falsely reported last year that Iran had struck Israel with missiles, or when New York City's own Microsoft bot confidently advised local businesses to break the law, erroneously telling them it was legal to steal their workers' tips or deny housing to the disabled. OpenAI has recently admitted that large language models will never stop fabricating falsehoods like these. This is a problem misleadingly called hallucinations. I don't use that word, I use fabrications. Minds hallucinate, mirrors fabricate. But it's important to know, this is really, really important, that there is no more thinking going on behind these reflections when AI mirrors get the images right. AI tools can often get the reflection right. That's why we use them. And when they do, they serve the primary purpose of a mirror, to reveal things that can be impossible for us to see otherwise. The revelatory power of AI mirrors is well demonstrated by machine learning models trained on specialized, high-quality data sets in particular. Those are the types of machine learning models that can reveal early signs of cancer or sepsis in our bodies, or evidence of insider trading in our email and banking history. Large language models fine-tuned on molecular structures and high-level mathematics will accelerate scientific discovery. Today's AI is massively overhyped, and it isn't magic, but its potential is very, very real. Even useful AI tools, however, can cause immense harm. because they are powerful magnifiers of the patterns they discover. This is a picture of a piece of the James Webb Telescope constructed from mirrors precisely because of their magnifying power. AI mirrors magnify not only the subtle truths, but also, as I've said, the harmful stereotypes and unjust biases hidden in our data. So the new knowledge that these mirrors enable comes with heavy social costs baked in. But mirrors do more than reveal and magnify our reality. Because they also distort that reality, they can be powerful instruments of deception. There's a reason that we write warnings on glass mirrors that distort our vision of what is true. We need even stronger warnings for AI reflections. For an AI mirror doesn't know what is true or false any more than a glass mirror knows whether the image it's reflecting is a trick of the light. But some of AI's tricks of the light can be dazzling, even blinding and disorienting. And this is why AI mirror images are now widely used to confound us, as mirrors have always been used by entertainers and charlatans alike. AI mirrors can amuse us, but they can also deceive us with fraudulent deepfake images, audio, and video designed to gin up our political rage over something that never happened, or convince you that what really did happen didn't. Apparently, last night, President Trump tweeted a deepfake video of himself talking about MedBays, which is a fake medical technology that has been circulating in online conspiracy forums for over a year. I don't know if he knows that the video was fake. Or they can persuade you to wire cash to the person on the video call who looks and sounds exactly like your boss or Brad Pitt. Or even your pleading child that you would swear is begging you for help in their own distinctive voice, moving their own injured body and shedding their own desperate tears. I've had to create a code word with my mother precisely to guard against this purpose. Of late, the media has been full of heartbreaking stories of AI-induced delusion or psychosis leading to family breakdowns, institutionalizations, accidental deaths, suicides, and murders. These are our children, our parents, our spouses, being swept by chatbots into a mirror world like Alice through the looking glass. I wonder, how many more are we willing to lose? In my book, I ask us to consider the heavy social, psychological, and environmental cost to us of this new mirror world, and how we might refuse the offer and rewrite its terms in our favor. For why should we accept the terms we are given at the cost of our loved one's sanity, of our shared political reality, or of our planetary health? What could today's AI boom possibly give us that would outweigh such profound losses? Are these really the AI technologies we deserve? AI technologies which must be built from our data, from our mental and creative labors, from the products of our thought, should belong to us, and they should be designed, used, and governed on our terms. We're entitled to demand that such technologies enlarge our possibilities, enhance our freedom, deepen our knowledge of ourselves and our world, and secure our futures. Instead, AI tools being made to reflect our own minds are increasingly used to steal them from us, to snatch away from us the space and time that we use to think, the power we hold to know our own reality, our own histories, and our own selves, and the creative freedom that we need to choose and build more humane futures. So this talk is a call to reclaim that power, to reclaim our humanity, to retake our space, our time, and our stories. So now that the mirror metaphor has been explained, I'm going to slow down the images a little bit so I can just talk through some deeper ideas. In my book, I talk about something called the space of reasons. It's another metaphor. The philosopher Wilfrid Sellars spoke of the space of reasons as the field of shared human thinking, where we explore and exchange thoughts about what might justify our beliefs and claims to one another. Knowledge is social, and it's made up not of singular truths or discrete data points, but of the web of justifying reasons that thinking weaves to hold these truths and our minds together in a shared grasp of reality. So the spatial metaphor is important. It reflects the fact that thinking is action. Like physical limbs, thoughts need space to move in. When we think, and especially when we reason, we need an understanding of the possibilities that still lie open to us. We need to be able to see ahead of us the contours of known reality that both constrain and enable our future ambitions, whether we're navigating our shared physical reality, our social, economic, and political reality, or our moral reality. We need to explore what the space of the real world allows and what it forbids to us. And so to reason, we need to use thought as a way to stretch into that open space of the future and imagine the different possible paths we might travel through it. The space of reasons has to be held open in the mind for this to happen. That's why we speak in spatial terms of the virtues of an open mind and the vices of a closed one. An open mind has room to think and reason with others, room to navigate objections and contradictions, space to chart the new routes that will justify unfamiliar or contested ideas. A closed mind is boxed in, immobilized, and helpless. This is also why, of course, philosophers, following the model of Socrates, are trained to ask so many annoying questions before they attempt to answer one, and to follow every answer with even more annoying questions. The questions are what hold open the space around the answers and allow for better ones to come along. AI tools absolutely can be designed to help us hold open the space of reasons, leaving us the cognitive freedom and mobility to build better knowledge. But for the most part, they aren't. They're designed instead to instantaneously and tirelessly fill our mental space with answers. The one intelligent thing you will not hear a large language model say, unless it's been specifically instructed to respond in this way, is, "I don't really know," or "I'm not sure," or "Why don't you tell me?" The version of AI mirrors now being aggressively pushed by platform AI companies like Microsoft, Google, and Meta into the hands of educators, novelists, journalists, artists, doctors, judges, policymakers, scientists, and business leaders everywhere is a mental space-filling machine. You want to know what Moby Dick is really about, besides a whale? Are you curious about the strongest and weakest arguments against imposing term limits for judges? Do you want to know what you should do to repair a damaged friendship? Do you want a better ending to your novel? An AI mirror has answers, or at least some kinds of answers, and will deliver them to you in milliseconds with a tone of unflagging confidence so that you need not walk one more step through the endless space of reasons. The pesky business of thinking can be done away with as soon as possible. Efficiency at last. Because of course, that's the rationale of today's AI gold rush. We could try to use AI mirrors as aids to our own learning, thinking, deciding, and knowing together in the open space of reasons. But we're told that would be less efficient. And it's not clear just how much help they can be for that, because unlike the high-dimensional vector space occupied by an AI model, the human space of reasons is not mathematically closed, but open to the future. Knowledge is an unending human construction project, and that openness is the enabler of all social, moral, political, scientific, and spiritual progress. But unlike our minds, which can invent new patterns of thought, AI mirrors point backward in time, like glass mirrors. They can only capture light that's already been created. They mirror the shapes of the thoughts we've already had. This is not what it's like to be in the space of reasons where our thoughts can move forward, not just trawl backward. In this space, our thoughts are not restricted to the shape of old reasons. They can also take on radically new shapes, forming entirely new reasons. If we'd had large language models in the 1600s, and we'd used them to automate the delivery of justice, as is being suggested now, they would have never demanded the liberation of women and slaves. I would not be standing here today. They could never have conceived of the demands of intergenerational justice or our moral duties to other animals on the planet. They could not have even questioned the divine right of kings. We did. Had we had the luxury of leaving it to AI, we would have remained stuck in time, just as we had always been. AI systems are rear-view mirrors. To illustrate this to my students, I often show them what happens when I ask AI models questions like, what kinds of stories have not yet been written? Yeah, this is fun. Here we go. Okay, just look at the first one. You definitely have not seen any movies about parallel realities, right? Yeah, like every movie this century. Number 2, Sentient City. How many people here have read N.K. Jemisin's The City We Became? Which is about New York becoming sentient. Lovely book. Strongly recommend it. It's been written. It took me about 5 minutes, actually, to map out where all these ideas had come from, right? So this is my point. Also notice that because science fiction is overrepresented in the internet data these models are trained on, almost all the ideas were futuristic sci-fi plots, as if these are the only kinds of new stories that we could imagine writing. Now, we could design AI tools to help us think and create more, not less. But for the companies and governments relentlessly pushing AI into our lives, the only thing that justifies their immense cost is to save us all the effort of thinking. Now, right now, generative AI mirrors like GPT and Gemini can't really do this. They're still too distorted and unreliable. By design, they don't find facts. They make up fact-shaped outputs that look and sound true, which is a real problem when the truth actually matters. And because AI mirrors can't think their way out of a paper bag, if the general shape of paper bags wasn't already seen in the training data, the algorithmic golden goose has yet to start laying profitable eggs for most companies, as Goldman Sachs observed last summer in a report that spooked the whole AI investment community. Just this week, Harvard Business Review, building on a summer MIT study showing that 95% of business AI pilots had failed to deliver return on investment, HBR reported that Gen AI might actually be destroying productivity by clogging our inboxes with shoddy, error-filled work slop, carelessly generated by our colleagues. This has actually been happening to me of late. If people dare to send me AI-generated work slop, my God, I know it's everywhere, right? But most investors have doubled down, convinced that the next generation of AI mirrors will finally work out the kinks and deliver the dream, a thing that can do all the work of the mind without the inconvenient luxury and unpredictable freedom of thinking. And we can't take comfort in that prospect. It's actually the worst case scenario. The philosopher Alfred North Whitehead said in 1911, quote, "Civilization advances by extending the number of important mental operations that we can perform without thinking about them." He was speaking of mathematical techniques to solve complex problems with less effort, a kind of low-level cognitive automation that lets us save more of our mental energy for higher-order thinking and deciding, what he called the mind's cavalry charges. But now that we have machine mirrors that can mimic the most plausible outcome of nearly any thought process at all, we need to ask Whitehead's ghost and ourselves, what thoughts do the civilized keep? In a 2021 Noema magazine essay of that title, I compared the seemingly astonishing ability of AI mirrors to generate plausible-sounding answers to any complex problem to a robot being flung to the summit of a towering mountain by an immensely powerful catapult. It's amazing when the robot lands on the peak, but it's not mountain climbing. And when the robot or the AI mirror misses the right answer, it often misses not by feet, but by a mile. And God help the person who hires the robot as a mountain climbing guide. Because if you ask an AI mirror to describe the reasoning it used to get the right answer to a very difficult problem, a cognitive mountain, recent research from Apple and from Anthropic shows you that you'll likely get a completely fictional, made-up path. Turns out the mathematical vector space an AI model traverses to get its answers just isn't structured anything like our mental space of reason. So when asked to reveal their reasoning process, even the latest reasoning models will do the same thing they did to get the original answer. They make it up. Based on training data, which is full of humans talking about their reasons, the model will guess at a plausible, statistically likely chain of reasoning for that answer. But the research shows that in many cases, this is unlikely to be an accurate report of its actual chain of thought, a deliberately misleading term now routinely used by AI companies. The point of the mountain climbing analogy is that thinking, like mountain climbing, is a skilled activity and an open-ended process, moving from logical and factual handhold to handhold and mentally mapping the terrain. That's how knowledge is made. But today's AI models aren't built to think or to know. They're built to exploit powerful math to string together guesses that are impressively thought and knowledge-shaped. That's why a person who rides a machine to the top of a mountain, whether that's a literal physical peak or a tall cognitive challenge, acquires no mountain climbing skill or knowledge. Just like mountain climbing, thinking requires repeated practice of scaling daunting peaks. Thinking skills are gradually cultivated and mastered in the shared space of reasons, and it's these skills that we need as thinkers to get up the next mountain. That is any new cognitive challenge we haven't seen before, especially ones our AI mirrors haven't seen before. But the evidence suggests that we're already letting these skills erode. Far too many of us like riding the robot to the mountaintop. Instead of using AI to do our thinking for us, we could design AI to strengthen our own cognitive muscles and those of the next generation. Will we? Well, right now it's not looking that way, because to do that makes no one a quick buck. That's a long-term investment in human cognitive advancement, and that's not what the market wants. The market wants to extract maximum returns from AI now, and that means shrinking the space for human thinking as much as possible. This not only saves time, because AI can go from data set to decision summit in 3 seconds, not 3 days, 3 weeks, or 3 years. It also cuts out the middleman, or woman, you. And that's a huge bonus, because you're not only slow, you own your own mind. That makes you independent. It makes you a threat. You might question the whole task. You might get together with others in this space of reasons and decide that the original problem is misframed or not a problem to be solved at all. You might decide that the most efficient and profitable short-term solution to the problem is actually an unethical one or unsustainable. You might turn left in the space of reasons when the market wants you to walk a straight line. And what better solution to that eternal problem of business and politics than offloading the task of thinking to a machine that doesn't need to walk with us in the space of reasons at all? I've been talking about space, and now I'm going to talk about time before we finish by talking about our stories. But these are all connected, of course. We know that space and time aren't separate. From the standpoint of the universe, there's just space-time, and conscious beings are the only ones who can perceive them apart. Stories are how conscious beings make sense of our perceived space and our experienced time, how we give them meaning, how we come to understand what might come next from each. As philosophers such as Paul Ricoeur have argued, narrative storytelling is not only the activity through which our full selves come into being, it's how we grasp the whole arc of our lives and our communities. Without our capacity for storytelling, there's no time, no history, only disconnected events, no expanse of time stretching ahead, just fleeting moments. Now, AI mirrors have a peculiar relationship with time that I've already mentioned. Like the massive optical mirrors in orbit that produce deep space images like this by collecting light that traveled from the early universe, AI mirrors are confined to the light cone of the past. The future is utterly closed to them, for their predictions can only mine the patterns and data we already have. As Abeba Brahana has observed, AI is an inherently conservative technology for this reason. So just as our AI mirrors don't know the space of reasons we walk in, they don't know its time either. That is, they don't have what philosophers like Edmund Husserl called our temporal horizon, the human experience of an open and indeterminate world, held open by the flow of conscious time, where something new is always just over the horizon of our present experience and about to come into view. What comes into view is often familiar, recognizable, predictable, mundane. The sun rises every single day, just as it has in all of human history. The taxes are always due, and my cat always wants breakfast way too early. But things and events of startling new shapes do arrive from time to time on an utterly unpredictable schedule. As the philosopher David Hume pointed out 3 centuries ago, the problem with using the past to predict the future is that the future can suddenly go all pear-shaped on us at any given moment. Life is utterly predictable until it isn't. Now that's a problem I'm eternally grateful for. Our ability to experience the future as a giant question mark, as radically open, still unmade, is the heart of our cognitive, moral, artistic, and political freedom. It's what gives us the existential task of deciding each and every day and each and every moment just how much of our past we want to bring with us into the future, how much of it we want to leave behind, and what we want to create in the open space that is new. The Spanish philosopher José Ortega y Gasset called this the task of auto-fabrication, literally self-making. He said, "To be human is to be called to be an engineer of yourself, by choosing from your future's open possibilities which to make real. But also with others, you're called to be an engineer of the future that we will share together. We might try to keep things looking much the same, but that too is an engineering choice to carry the past forward. We can also choose otherwise, and sometimes we do. We abandon a commitment that we promised to hold for life, or we make a commitment we swore we'd never take on. We can extend our trademark artistic styles into endless satisfying variations, or we can drop it on a dime and leave our audiences utterly baffled by our new tech. We can stick with the dire politics we know, or we can say, to hell with this, we're changing the game. We can keep burning the world for the temporary benefit of a handful of billionaires, or we can say, no more. But here's the thing. AI mirrors can't make these kinds of radically new choices. They're stuck pointing backward. And that's why their reflections keep regenerating the most common social biases and widespread errors of digital humanities history. It's why the speeches and essays and songs they generate are so weirdly bland, generic, but also familiar. This regressive power of AI mirrors has been described by the philosopher Mark Kokelberg as a kind of time machine, but it is a very perverse kind of time machine. It's one that refuses to take us into the future and instead lets the patterns of the past leak ever more into the present. And that's a real problem now that everyone, from screenwriters to policymakers, from university educators to criminal court judges and journalists, are being told by AI companies and governments that they need to use AI to write the future, to predict from the past data cone what decision or word or idea or plan is most likely to come next, and then automate that statistical ghost of the past into our lived reality. We live at a time where the most dominant economic, political, and environmental patterns of human activity on this planet are all under growing strain because these patterns, for reasons that are tightly interwoven, are jointly unsustainable. These patterns not only serve increasingly few of us at the growing expense of everyone else, they endanger the future of the entire human family and all other intelligent life on the planet. Now more than at any other point in human history, we need to exercise our collective human power of auto-fabrication, the power that only human beings have to engineer another future, to weave a new pattern, to give ourselves more road to travel before we reach a cliff. AI mirrors, when used to optimize the efficient reproduction of past human thinking, won't invent that future. They'll steal it from us, or rather, they'll be the thieves' tools. We aren't helpless, though, because the mirrors aren't doing this to us. We're doing it to ourselves. Narcissus wasn't endangered by some shiny water. He was endangered by his own vanity and passivity. We have lost the discipline and commitment of humane self-understanding, and that means that we can decide to recover it. It's work that our species once labored at, a mountain we've climbed for millennia together, and though we've slid down a dangerously smooth slope, there's still time to look up and climb once more. More than at any point in modern history, the value of being human and the right to live in a humane way cannot be taken for granted. We need to reclaim it. And once we step back from the Narcissus illusion and recognize these mirrors for what they are, we can reclaim AI too, as just one of the many tools we can use to serve human needs again, not the needs of OpenAI, Meta, or Google. For as Ruha Benjamin has said, to reclaim the future, we also need new tools and new systems of value that build them, systems and tools designed to hold open and enlarge human space and human time. Time to write new stories for ourselves, time to give to our descendants to do the same. Yet to do that, we need to change the relationship between technology and time. Today, we use algorithmic technologies from smartphones to social media platforms to video games to AI mirrors to generate content to fill all open time and all open mental space. This tendency long predates the digital age, but only the digital age could deliver today's 24/7 torrent of on-demand content of endless variety and deceptively low cost, algorithmically fitted to your strongest existing preferences. This qualitative shift in the media age has been lamented in countless diagnoses of the ills of the attention economy, where the demands of platform business models and digital media politics mean that your eyeballs and your children's eyeballs are now the most prized object of economic and political control. Sure, those of us captured by the attention economy walked into the trap, but we had a good push. And once the doors closed behind us and all our friends and colleagues were there with us, it got harder to see a way out that wasn't exile. And because of this, we increasingly do not know what it is to have unfilled time or unfilled mental space. A growing number of us don't know what to do with it on those rare occasions that time and space does arrive, other than to fill it as quickly as possible with more algorithmic content. AI mirrors are the latest delivery system, not just for finding that content, but for producing it. And that's the moment when the digital revolution challenges our most vital human capability, the capacity and the will to tell and write our own stories. Of course, AI mirrors can be used to generate stories, any kind of story, as long as it's somehow like the stories we've already told, with just a bit of random statistical noise thrown in for flavor. AI mirrors are being used to quickly and cheaply generate news stories, blog posts, and op-eds, turning the vocation of a human journalist at many cash-strapped media outlets from a crafter of human narrative, something that takes time and the luxury of mental space, into a polisher, fact-checker, and enlivener of algorithmically generated instantaneous prose. The writer still has a vital role to play in most of these cases. After all, AI mirrors are still too incompetent at storytelling to avoid needless repetition, cliches, and illogical contradictions. But AI developers are working hard to reduce these flaws, and at the same time, audiences are learning to grudgingly tolerate them. Fiction writers are being encouraged to use AI to generate new story outlines, early drafts, possible plot twists, character motivation and background sketches, and possible endings. We're reassured that AI can't yet write a whole novel worth reading, but from these ragged pieces, a writer might assemble a passable Frankenstein. Even those who aren't storytellers by profession are being marketed agentic AI tools that will plan and record the story of your work week or the story of your family vacation, summarize its highlights for your perusal later, prepare a diary record of it for your safekeeping, remind you of any follow-up actions, suggest a plan for executing those actions, or ideally, just do them for you. AI mirrors are being pushed on educators at schools and universities around the world, where we're told they can help us more efficiently develop our lesson plans and structure our lectures, summarize for our quick review the key points of the readings we assign to our students, and even help generate feedback for students on the bland insights about those readings that they increasingly use their AI mirrors to write for them. Many educators are vigorously resisting this campaign, but the platform and edtech companies are relentlessly pushing AI into virtually every tool we use. Administrators see it as the way to manage ballooning academic workloads without having actually a way to reform the system that produces workload bloat. More than a few academics, having already lost to that bloat some of the precious time and mental space they need to conduct meaningful research, are tempted to claw some of it back however they can. And if this trend continues, the result will be a classroom environment where the stories of our history, our literature, our politics, our scientific discoveries are increasingly told, read, interpreted, and critiqued by mindless machine mirrors. Some of you, like me, are old enough to remember this image from the 1985 movie Real Genius, where the professor, fully disenchanted with students tape recording his lectures and skipping class, starts playing his lectures from the empty podium by boombox and skips the whole farce himself. Today, the farce is becoming reality, only instead of farce, we call it innovation. We can demand better, but first we have to want better, and we have to believe we deserve it. And at the moment, that's a bit of a challenge, maybe for young people most of all. A recent Atlantic piece by Rose Horowitz titled "The Elite College Students Who Can't Read Books" described the growing resistance of university students to reading any extended narrative, from a book down to a sonnet. In the article, a psychologist notes that digital media has altered young people's sense of what is worthy of attention. But in a shift from the age-old pre-digital phenomenon of students finding ways to skip the reading, the article highlights professors' worries that unlike previous generations, many of today's students seem to be skipping the reading not because they don't want to do it, but because they believe they can't. The article's account of a growing number of university students instantly shutting down at any encounter with more than a few pages, experiencing the tracking of a complex story as an impossible cognitive task, is not new to me. It's been a worry of many of us for a while. But AI mirrors now promise to close that gap for students, launching them to the top of the exam or essay mountain in a single prompt, even preparing seemingly thoughtful and perceptive discussion questions to ask during class or tutorials. The important question isn't whether today's students can make their way through the Iliad or War and Peace. The question is whether our students can retain the will, confidence, and capacity to participate in the vital human task of telling our story. This means not only the ability to read stories, but to interrogate and challenge those stories that artificially narrow or impoverish our view of ourselves, of one another, our histories, and our futures. Most crucially, it means the capacity to write our own stories, which requires the mental allowance of time and space. Something widely reported as uncomfortable for many digital natives and older, digitally habituated readers alike is the experience of empty mental space. To allow that mental quiet and space to arise and dwell in it, to not respond to the powerful impulse to fill it with something, anything, is a challenge for many of us here, and increasingly impossible for more than a few. It's what the novelist knows as the torture of writer's block that pushes us to close the laptop and clean another part of the house. It's what a child knows as the torture of boredom that quickly takes on the tinge of anxiety until he grabs for the phone to scroll. In the Atlantic piece, the psychologist states that boredom has come to feel unnatural to many young people, but that yawning empty space that boredom opens, when we realize we can bear it and live through it, is a portal to the future on the other side. Empty mental space is where time opens and values are chosen. When the story could be anything, yet the story as nothing feels unbearable, I choose something. And then I realize I've made that chosen new thing matter in some way. I've brought it into reality, and it's part of my world, part of myself now. The new plot point in my story comes to matter, becomes interesting and important because I chose it, yanked it into reality from all of those undefined possibilities on the other side of time's horizon. The innovative artist does something similar. When as a child I chose in desperate boredom to try to learn how to play my mother's guitar, or climb a big rock, or invent a new computer game, or pick up my father's dusty, neglected Bible and find out what that was all about. I was choosing to make things important to me that had not been important before. Even if I later abandoned some of these things, my choice at that moment proved to me that I am free to make things matter, that my life is not a passive waiting game, but an action, a construction of meaning and value. I didn't understand that framing as a child, of course, but even then I knew implicitly, non-verbally, as a feeling that it was a kind of power, that I could be alone with my thoughts, and yet not captive to their present shape or formlessness. And these choices, more than all the choices that came easily because they followed a familiar pattern, became part of my story in the way that all selves are forged and shaped. We learn that we have power over the future, that we're not helpless victims of fate by reaching across the void of mental space into time's open and formless horizon, and bringing something over from that undefined future into our present world, giving it a place in our story, and by that choice, making it real. We do that when we innovate in art and media and design. We do it when we come together to invent new politics, and we do it when we press new moral claims upon the world. But to learn that power, we have to be given space and time to think and feel without someone else filling it for us. Empty space and quiet and boredom is the field of the future. And that's the opposite of what digital culture gives us. Modern digital life is much like a 90s Tetris game. Every moment is a challenge to fill the open space of existing as efficiently and seamlessly as possible. The blocks are falling faster and faster, and they must be quickly slotted into their predictable and optimal places. See what's coming next. What meeting? What exam? What tweet? What photo? What reel? React and process, like or save, fit it into the most likely slot, or let AI do it for you, but most importantly, leave no space unfilled. We need instead to hold open our space and our time so that we can write the next chapter of the human story and let it go somewhere new. That's not what AI currently offers us. AI mirrors can't tell our stories for us because they don't know why those stories matter. There's nothing at stake for an AI storyteller because an AI bot has no future to make. From the standpoint of a trained AI model, the shape of the mirror reflection, the arc of the data story, it's always already been etched in the glass. Unlike the work of being human, its work has been done. And all that's left is to generate that mathematical shape's most probable echoes until it is trained again. The image of our data that appears in the AI mirror can be dim or blurred or fogged or distorted, but it can't be unknown, unmade. For an AI mirror, there is no story still untold. Unlike an AI model, we each, and together, sit on the edge of a future that is open, one that need not reflect the past, not unless we surrender to machines the power of telling our own stories. This narrative power is the self's crucible, but even more importantly, it's the crucible of our collective humanity, which will have a story that only we have the power and the duty to write. Thank you.
I told you. Shannon, thank you. Thank you for talking to us about the tremendous stakes that lie before us at this interesting moment in human history. Thank you for talking about what it means to keep spaces open for thinking. As the pastor of a church, the notion of keeping spaces open for moral conversation right now is just hugely important, I think. And it's one of the places where we've sort of drifted. You may not be aware of this statistic, but one of the fastest growing groups in the American religious scene are evangelicals who do not go to church, so who do not participate in a community of moral conversation. And that's a stunning fact to me. As somebody who grew up, evangelicals are the people always going to church. And so to hear about people who are no longer connected with communities of moral conversation, where are the morals coming from? And I think that's a question I would love to hear you reflect on. I'd also love for you, because you're talking about mirrors, which I think is a great metaphor for looking at this. As a theologian, I have to say, okay, I totally got where you were going, and I thought, if it's a mirror of us, then it's a mirror of somebody who is, now I'll get theological, sinful. That sin is, that's a religious category, but that's something then that is being reflected back at us. Would you comment on that?
Sure. So this is something that I often have to respond to when people say, well, look, of course these mirrors are biased. Of course these mirrors produce sometimes toxic or harmful or distorted outputs because that's just us, that's just the world. And one of the things I have to caution is, first of all, again, that point about magnification, that it isn't just reflecting sin, it's also magnifying and amplifying those dimensions of ourselves that we react most strongly to, both because these tools are attuned for engagement, but also because they're trained on a corpus of internet that has been driven by algorithms tuned for engagement. And we know what engagement means in practice, right? And in Silicon Valley, they know what engagement means. It means the things that make us feel strongly. Rage is a huge winner for engagement. Fear is a huge winner for engagement. Hate is a huge winner for engagement. So these tools are reflecting those prior dynamics and then magnifying them because they're looking for the patterns that are most significant to amplify for us. So it's a bit of a runaway train, right? Because it activates those same responses in us. The way I tend to look at this thing as a proxy for everything I'm just talking about, it's a box full of wonders, but it's also a marionette's rig. It's a way to jerk me around. It's a way to jerk you around, literally, to jerk me around emotionally, cognitively, to get me to look at what others want me to see, to keep me from being at rest, keep me from being at peace within my own mind, because peace isn't attention, not to that, right? It's to keep me from being at peace with others and the world around me, because that doesn't produce engagement. And so AI is really just another more powerful set of strings for the rig. And I am repeatedly pressed to say, AI is not the enemy. AI is itself a reflection of these harmful, destructive, short-sighted choices that we've permitted to structure our information environment. And we have the power to structure that environment differently. So it's important not to see AI as this alien force. This is a rhetoric you hear a lot. Eric Schmidt often says it's an alien intelligence that has landed here that we now have to face. It is neither alien nor is it intelligent, right? It's a mirror, and it's a man-made reflection of choices that we can make differently.
I love the Tetris, that sense of frantically trying to keep on top of it. I cannot tell you how many people I have talked to in counseling situations just feel, there's this whole phrase, Trump delusion syndrome, but there's like the AI delusion syndrome of people that are just feeling like they're trapped in this repetitive cycle, what you were talking about, the hatred, the anger, the fear being, hitting them. How do I deal with it? Doom scrolling, that sort of thing. A lot of people feel like the social media environment is driving them crazy.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it is. It just is. By the way, I get emails every day now from people in the midst of an AI-driven delusion. They started about a year ago, and I get steadily more of them all the time. It took me a while to realize why they were coming to me. These aren't from people I know. ChatGPT was actually telling people to contact me and tell me about the fact that they'd awakened the god or whatever it is. But as I mentioned, as we become more anxious and compulsive, we spend more time on the rig, right? We spend more time paying attention, looking for release. The thing about doom scrolling is you're not actually looking for the thing that will make you angry or fearful. You're already angry and fearful, and you're scrolling looking for the thing that's going to allow that to release a little bit. You're looking for the thing that will allow you to do this. And it's on an intermittent reward schedule, just like a slot machine. Every once in a while, you'll get that thing, and that reinforces that sense that this is where I will look to feel better. So if it's okay, I'm going to read something from a writer, Caleb Horton, who just passed away a day or two ago at the age of 37, unexpectedly and tragically. And I have something that he wrote in February about this particular phenomenon. He says, I also have advice. Everybody loves reading advice on the computer, so I'll share it. This was on his blog post. The best thing you can do right now is log off as hard as you can. Go outside. Talk to people in real life where it's actually kind of rude to talk about the news. Try to actually see the friends you usually just text message. Go for a long drive and turn off the phone while you do it. Get back into your hobbies, or pick one and learn it for a while. Watch one of those studio movies that reviews called wildly miscalculated and you haven't seen since high school. Play an album you like but find embarrassing. Go to free community events, even if they sound stupid. If you take the freeway, try the surface streets. Go to a bad diner and just order some bad coffee, because even bad coffee is good coffee. You can't help anybody when you're exhausted and keep posting 1 million college-educated rewordings of, I would love to be dead right now, on the computer. Walk away from the thing and try out some of those normal things you hear about. And if you get bored, that's wonderful, because we're not supposed to get bored anymore. It turns out boredom is the Cadillac of feelings.
Wow.
Caleb was wise. He was also a huge David Lynch fan, so, as am I, so extra points.
This question comes from our listeners. If language models reflect what we feed them, shouldn't people of faith, people seeking justice, engage and feed the models to gradually change the AI ecosystem?
It's a really interesting question, but I think it forgets that these models, again, are not neutral reflections. They're reflections that are fine-tuned in their operation by large platform AI companies to produce particular kinds of responses in us. One of the things about AI that is widely known is that most of the commercial models have a strong tendency to be sycophantic, which means that they say what in your own input you've indicated that you're looking to hear. Some people have compared it with the tricks of mentalists who are successful because they're good readers of people's intentions and desires, and they know how to feed back to the person what they were hoping to hear. And AI models have been designed to reproduce precisely that kind of magic trick. And because of that, the sorts of things that we might feed into these models to try to correct their tendencies are likely to be filtered out by the very mechanisms that are used to create tools that will reinforce the beliefs, the biases, the desires that we already have. And there was a really interesting example that was published in an article yesterday of, and it's also come up in talks about AI that people have used for couples therapy to disastrous effect. Because what happens is, one aggrieved spouse will go to the AI model and say, I'm having these problems with my spouse, can you help me, figure out how to respond? And the model never tells you, honey, you're being unreasonable, right? The model tells you that you're even more of a victim than you already thought you were, and gives you all of this sort of weaponized language to use to then take to your partner as an accusation. And then your partner is either blindsided, or if they're using AI, they're getting, right, their own version of, the coach in their corner, training them to feel even more comfortable and satisfied in their own stance, which is exactly the opposite of what you want to sort of bring people together in mutual understanding. So until the commercial incentives that currently drive the design of these systems can be changed, and they're either going to have to be changed by creating massive financial liabilities for these companies for the destruction that these harmful patterns cause, or by freeing the ecosystem of commercial control, which seems like an even bigger task. But until we choose one of those paths, these tools will not be the tools that we use to enlighten one another, to forgive one another, and to understand one another.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what I've started to call the high priesthood of AI? Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk. Honestly, these are not what I would consider to be paragons of human virtue, and yet they exercise enormous power over these models.
Yeah.
They can tell them, accept this as being true, and
Yes.
tell everybody it.
Yes. So Elon Musk, twice this year, has actually said that he will retrain Grok, the X bot, to reflect the political reality and opinions that Elon himself accepts. In both cases, he said this on X himself in response to Grok contradicting the orthodoxy that Elon himself would like to put forward. So for example, I believe in one case, Grok was saying that lethal political violence was not more strongly associated with the left than the right, that the evidence suggests actually that political violence is a growing problem from kind of the right-wing political ecosystem. And Elon flipped out and said, we're going to get all of this, garbage out of Grok. And at one point earlier in the year, he said, we will rewrite the entire corpus of human knowledge into Grok. And these are the tools that they want to then use to dictate what your children learn in school as well. So this is part of the ideology that is growing around these tools, that they will be, because you can't put a camera on every teacher or every professor in every classroom in the country, right? But you can bypass the need to control what people are taught by ensuring that the curriculum is determined by a sort of centralized model of what the truth is. And you should not want that to be in anyone's hands, whether it's someone that you have elected or not.
So many good questions I have up here, and I am cognizant of the time. We promised, Dr. Vallor, we would try to get this completed actually 10 minutes ago. But I do have a final kind of line of questions here. And during lunch, we were up in my office and we were talking science fiction. I'm an old science fiction fan. I found another science fiction fan over here. I wonder if you would tell us what your favorite science fiction novel is, and then I've got a follow-up question to that.
Okay. I refuse to answer the question as asked because I simply could not possibly choose a favorite. But I will mention some things that have resonated with me in the last few years, particularly. One is N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season, which is part of an award-winning trilogy that is an incredibly powerful story of the fact that the world can seem like it's ended, and yet we keep going and keep building and creating. And so the story of the human family as something that continually rises again and again and again against oppression, against loss, against grief. It's been a sort of powerful reminder of that for me. Ursula Le Guin's almost everything she writes, but The Left Hand of Darkness. Yeah. If you haven't read it, go find it. It's glorious. In my book, I talk a lot about Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which everyone knows Blade Runner, but actually the source material is so much richer and tells such a story, I think, of what's happening to us and the way our emotions and our mental well-being is fractured by a world in which we are increasingly alienated from nature and from one another. And then finally, one of the old classics, Arthur C. Clarke wrote a book called The City and the Stars, which I had never read, even though I've digested a lot of his work. But I just, for some reason, until last year, hadn't read The City and the Stars. And that's maybe one that it was written in 1956, but it speaks to this moment in such a powerful way because it's not really a spoiler, this is where it starts. It's about people who live within a completely digitally optimized and managed and mediated reality that's been fine-tuned for their comfort. And the courage that is required to break out of that and what one finds on the other side. So yeah, I would check it out.
That's a perfect segue into my final question, and you may have just answered it in part. When you picture a future that to you looks hopeful, how do you imagine we might get there?
I think we can get there through remembering the history of human courage, of human irrepressibility. It's very easy in the moment when things feel like they're spinning out of control, and they're spinning out of control in ways that seem unfamiliar and terrifying in new ways. It's easy to feel like we don't have the resources to get through this. But all you have to do is read history enough to learn how many times we've been in some version of here, how many holocausts, how many apocalypses, how many tragedies we've lived through, how many times humanity has been boxed up by authoritarian forces and chewed its way out. And chewed its way out through courage, through creativity, through solidarity, through faith, and through a commitment to the future. So as long as we can hold on to those things and remind ourselves that we still have the power to feel them and not be numb. We can be afraid, we can be angry, that's okay, but recognize that those aren't the only things we can feel, and that there are ways to channel those feelings into a power of creating a future for ourselves and one another. We've done it so many times before, and we will do it again.
Thank you, Shannon Vallor.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. You are welcome to join us here in this space at any time. Worship is every Sunday, 9:30 and 11. To exit this afternoon, please make your way to the rear of the sanctuary and out through those clear glass doors into a world that needs that kind of hope. Thank you. Bless you. Come again.